way tonight, way tonight. Bets are off, I'm gonna find my way tonight, way tonight. Won't you talk to me? I wanna heal your sorrow. Won't you talk to me? We'll make a new tomorrow. Won't you talk to me? What makes this happy face? Showing off, don't wanna have to wait tonight, wait tonight. Bets are off, I'm gonna find my way tonight, way tonight. Won't you talk to me? I wanna heal your sorrow. Won't you talk to me? We'll make a new tomorrow. Won't you talk to me? What makes this happy face do?
Okay. Good evening. Hello. It is time for some more Forbidden Religion. Um, we finished the first section, or the first part of the book last time. So we're actually getting into part 2, Follow the Golden Thread, Templars and Freemasonry. So if you haven't joined us before, it is Forbidden Religion. A compilation of articles from Atlantis Rising magazine from the late 90s and into the early 2000s. This stuff has mentioned stuff happening in like 2002, 2003, so, that gives you things that were current events at that time. So, yeah. All right. So, we're on Article 7 called Hidden History. What are movies like Braveheart not telling us by David Lewis? So we'll just jump right on into it. We'll do 2 articles tonight. Okay. Commenting on his book, The Realm of Merlin, Deepak Chopra once observed that history exists in the eye of the beholder. Chopra spoke of the history of the soul versus the textbook variety, and though the author didn't bother to cite examples, it's safe to say that historical accuracy has often taken a backseat to political correctness. The old Soviet Union comes to mind. In the days of Galileo, the Church defined reality. She even rearranged the heavens, declaring that the sun revolves around the earth, not the other way around. When heresy ran afoul of her, she obliterated not only the infidels but also their written testimony, as was the case with the Cathars in southern France. 7 centuries later, a standard textbook definition of the Cathars reflects the Church's geocentrism, as if all revolves around Rome. Yet the last time we checked, the Earth revolves around the Sun, which is in turn spins in the arm of a spiral galaxy reeling into infinity, and the truth behind medieval heresies may have a similar trajectory to the one discovered on the path of the never-ending quest for absolute knowledge, a path traversed by mystics, Templars, and Cathars alike. That quest, relegated by skeptics to quixotic fancy, has little to do with textbook history, yet everything to do with secret history, the history of the soul. Braveheart, the twice released film about the Scottish freedom fighter Sir William Wallace, opened a chapter in this book of secret history. The film deals with the war for Scottish independence in the late 13th century, but neglects a rarely discussed element in that struggle that has influenced human events up to the present. Like a golden thread, that key element runs through Scottish and American history. It runs through the Middle Ages and the Inquisition to ancient Israel, the Temple of Solomon, even to ancient Egypt. It links all of the above, winding further, deeper, and in a more clandestine way than politically correct chroniclers dare conceive. It is a thread that the Vatican armies tried to destroy, the order of the ancient mysteries and their progeny, the Knights Templar. Braveheart and Beyond, the textbook account. In the final years of the 13th century, William Wallace rallied Scotland against the English crown. As he did, many Scottish nobles lent only half-hearted support to the cause, and at times none at all. Even so, Wallace defeated the English governor, John de Warenne, near Stirling in 1297. As Braveheart poignantly shows, Robert the Bruce eventually championed Wallace's cause, but in 1305 Edward II got the better of Wallace. He captured the charismatic rebel and tried him for treason before seeing to it that Wallace was hideously tortured and executed. But the story continues. By the time of the Battle of Bannockburn in June 1314, the Scots had all but driven the king's forces back to England. Stirling Castle, the gateway to the Highlands, King Edward's last stronghold in Scotland, was under siege. The castle's weary governor vowed to surrender if the king's army did not relieve him by midsummer. Meeting the challenge, Edward assembled a heavily armored fighting force, possibly as large as 100,000 men, but probably closer to 20,000. He did so, most likely, not only to save Stirling, but also to annihilate Robert the Bruce and to occupy Scotland. To intercept the English army, Robert assembled a smaller force of only 8,000 men who were less heavily armed. The two armies met at Bannockburn, where, despite overwhelming odds, the Scots defeated the English. That dramatic victory paved the way for a free Scotland with Robert the Bruce as her king. What about the secret history? The Battle of Bannockburn took place on St. John's Day, June 24th, a day of particular importance to the Knights Templar, the enigmatic warrior monks of the Middle Ages. But accounts of the battle leave much to be desired. Even its location stands in question. Historians agree, though, that the English vastly outnumbered the Scots and that the Scottish army consisted mostly of pikemen with relatively few horsemen. Furthermore, those horsemen could have been no match for Edward's heavily armored knights. The amazing Scottish victory then rests on a mysterious event. During the battle, with all Scottish units engaged between Bannockburn, burn means stream, and the river Forth, something strange happened. A fierce charge erupted with banners flying from the Scottish rear. Historians describe the charge as consisting of camp followers, even children, non-combatants, when the English somehow mistook whom the English somehow mistook for a ferocious fighting unit. The charge, history tells us, arose spontaneously from the camp followers who made banners from sheets and gathered weapons from the dead and wounded. Incredibly, this charge, which by necessity would have been launched on foot, inspired such fear among the armored English knights who were mounted that they fled en masse. This almost romantic history appeals to Scottish patriotism. It is the stuff of legends or of Braveheart too. The idea, however, of unmounted peasants driving off a massive English army does not appeal to common sense. That the charge swept panic through the English ranks, though, seems clear. King Edward and 500 of his knights fled the battlefield, followed soon thereafter by the English foot soldiers, and although some accounts speak of slaughter, chronicled English losses were slight. The rout appears to have resulted from sheer panic alone. In The Temple and the Lodge, authors Michael Bejant and Richard Lay, which we've already read that book on this stream, um, the authors Michael Bejant and Richard Lay demonstrate that when the Inquisition began to hunt down Templars all over Europe, many Templars fled to Scotland. Bejant and Lay point convincingly to the mysterious attackers at Bannockburn as having been the Knights Templar, easily recognized by their banners and splayed crosses, the only fighting force of the time that could have inspired such fear and confusion. At Bannockburn, where a mounted Scottish charge is known to have occurred, the victorious Scots marched behind an arc-shaped receptacle known as the Monimusk Reliquary, a model of the Temple of Solomon that figures prominently in the Templar tradition. A rich and powerful brotherhood, the Templars proved difficult for the Church and the King of France to destroy. King Philip the Fair allied the Avignonese Pope Clement the Fifth ruthlessly suppressed. Let me start that sentence again. King Philip the Fair allied with Avignonese Pope Clement V ruthlessly suppressed the order throughout Europe, medieval style, with arrests, torture, and executions. As noted, many Templars evaded capture and found refuge abroad. The order's entire fleet, in fact, escaped with a vast fortune, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. Refugee Templars, evidence shows, found sanctuary in Scotland, where Templars' graves bear witness to their having lived and died in the 14th century. King Robert the Bruce apparently had no interest in persecuting the order, in spite of a papal bull ordering him to do so. To the contrary, he must have taken advantage of their fugitive status, offering them asylum if they would help him fight his war against England. Who were the Knights Templar really? Hugh de Payne and 8 other knights took vows on June 12, 1118, at Argueny Castle near Lyon, France. The 9 founders of the order pledged themselves to Christ and to the protection of pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. The textbooks tell us King Baudouin, Bodine, we'll say Bodine, of Jerusalem, whose brother Godefroy de Bouillon had captured the holy city for Christendom 19 years prior, received them with open arms as knights, a precedent that was to be repeated by kings all over the world. According to tradition, the knights built the quarters over the ruins of Solomon's temple, with some modern commentators believing which some modern commentators believe says something about the order's secret purpose. In 1126, the immensely influential Saint Bernard of Clairvaux won ecclesiastical legitimacy for the Templars at the Council of Troyes. From then on, the order's ranks swelled at an extraordinary rate, as did their treasury and holdings. In short time, the Templars held lands in England, France, Spain, Portugal, and Scotland. By the mid-12th century, they had established themselves second only to the papacy in wealth, powers, and prestige, an indication that their success hinged, as tradition suggests, on some secret knowledge. The Templars proved themselves extraordinarily influential, and despite abuses in the later years, consistently idealistic. Kings who were well aware of their power and at times subscribed to their ideals aligned themselves with the knights. The order in turn influenced kings, occupying themselves, for instance, with trying to reconcile England's King Henry II with Thomas A. Becket, and Henry's son Richard Coeur de Lion was likely an honorary Templar. He kept company with the knights, resided in their preceptories, sailed in their ships, and sold the island of Cyprus to them, which became the order's official seat for a time. Richard's brother and rival, King John, had as his trusted advisor Aymeric de Saint Mar, master of the order in England. Owing to Eymeric's counsel, King John, no champion of liberty, reluctantly signed the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that is cited along with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States as being foundational to the rights of man. Having grown astonishingly powerful, the Templars accomplished almost anything they desired on a scale and of a nature suggesting an all but supernatural capacity. Their role in designing and building the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe, for instance, a role often not credited to them, testifies to an esoteric knowledge of architecture that transcended anything in Western civilization save the pyramids of Egypt. As with the pyramids, the Gothic cathedrals baffle historians, as they have no historical technical precedent. Gothic architecture sprang, in fact, from the Templars and their dedication to sacred geometry, the mystical science of number and proportion frequently identified with the Egyptian pyramids and the Temple of Solomon. And we have a picture here. So it says an early Templar church which employs the round architecture typical of Templar buildings. And it's not a photo, it looks like a drawing. But there you go. Kind of a neat building. What was the Templars' secret purpose? The order's official raison d'etre as protectors of pilgrims remains an open question. Judging by their endeavors and associations, the Templars had more profound goals than the textbooks reveal, creating, for instance, material receptacles, grails, if you will, for the spiritual essence revered within their mystery tradition. Preceptories, cathedrals, churches, even nations, a universal brotherhood. To this end, the original 9 knights excavated the Temple of Solomon, possibly hoping to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. See Graham Hancock's The Sign and the Seal for a further discussion of this. I'll have to see if I have that book. I'm not sure. In so doing, the Templars would have wielded authority that transcended even the popes, paving the way for a Templar state adorned with structures of mystically oriented design. It is alleged in this regard that the original 9 knights secured secrets of design and proportion encoded in the Temple of Solomon itself, sacred geometry that may date to the building of the Egyptian pyramids. The Knights Templar, though, like any of us, can best be known by their fruit, which Bejant and Lay tell us includes writing the medieval Grail romances. The quest for the Holy Grail, then, and the import of that quest comes down to us from devotees of the mysteries, those who actually quested, and wherein we find Chopra's History of the Soul, the search for divinity, the most politically incorrect heresy of all, the modern age with notwithstanding, which in various guises has animated societies since the dawn of time. We may deduce that the Templars encoded the true nature, that of their order and of their souls, within the famous Grail legends. They were well aware of the consequences of doing so openly. Thus they established the ideal of the search for immortality in the popular psyche, the history of the soul, which, although being a reliable history, is also an unorthodox one in Chopra's terms. We may add this accomplishment, then, to the list of fruits by which the Templars can be known. We also applaud them for trying to syncretize for the purpose of creating a Golden Age kingdom. The Christian, Judaic, Islamic, and Celtic mysteries, centered at Carcassonne in southern France, were prior to the where prior to the Inquisition, a golden age had already begun to blossom under Cathar and Templar influence. Tracing our golden thread one step further, Wolfram von Eisenbach, said to have been a Templar himself, wrote the medieval Grail romance Parzival. In that epic story, he dubs the Templars, quote, protectors of the Grail and the Grail family, end quote. In this context, another book by Bejant and Lay, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, I do have that book, presents a cogent theory for the Templars having pledged themselves to this cause, not in fiction but in reality. It is alleged that the Grail family is composed of the actual descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, who legend says migrated to France, possibly as founders of the Merovingian dynasty. This extraordinary theory, recently popularized in Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code, suggests that in AD 679, after the assassination of the last Merovingian monarch, Dagobert II, protectors of the royal lineage formed a secret society, the Priory of Sion, around the Sangreal, the royal blood of the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. This may be the true meaning of Sangreal, Bejant and Lay suggest, the holy grail of medieval romancers. The Knights Templar, the authors say, may have had much to do with this Priory of Sion, the foundations of which may harken back to the house of David, to Jesus and Solomon, the lineage of the Israelite kings. The Templars may have secretly dedicated themselves to this very special bloodline, believing the wisdom legacy of Solomon and Jesus to be their own. Enthroning this lineage during the Middle Ages, the Templars would have set their golden age in motion. How does the Lost Ark of the Covenant fit into the puzzle? In Raiders of the Lost Ark, Steven Spielberg acquainted the viewing public with one of the great mysteries of all time, the fate of the Lost Ark of the Covenant, the ancient Israelite repository of divine authority. While Spielberg portrays Hitler's Reich lusting after the Ark in fiction, the Templars probably attempted to find the Ark in reality. Graham Hancock's The Sign and the Seal points convincingly to the Templars having pursued the lost Ark from Jerusalem to its alleged final resting place in Ethiopia. Hancock argues that the Ark itself may have been the enigmatic Holy Grail and that romancers encoded within their text the Templars' secret mission to find and harness the Ark's holy power. Bearing in mind that in the Middle Ages, possessing the Ark would have meant wielding the power of God, doing so would have established the Knights Templar as the dominant force on earth, the Pope notwithstanding. With evidence of the Templars having excavated the Temple of Solomon and then of their presence in Ethiopia, a country that figures in Eisenbach's Parzival, where the Ark is believed to reside to this day, a case exists for the Knights having searched for this famous artifact, probably to further their mystical/political goals of establishing a golden age. Secret history after Bannockburn. Tracing our golden thread to more recent centuries, the quest of the Knights Templar revealed itself long after the period of their official existence. Driven underground during the Inquisition, refugee knights, a specific Masonic tradition claims, gave birth to Scottish Freemasonry. That tradition traces its origins directly to the order and to King Robert the Bruce. Robert, the tradition specifically states, founded the first Scottish Masonic lodge after the Battle of Bannockburn to receive Templars fleeing persecution in France. Okay, we're almost done with this article. By the 17th century, the tradition had splintered into a variety of forms. The Jacobite variety, the most intensely political and mystically devoted, claimed the Templar tradition as its own. The Jacobites failed to restore the Scottish Stuarts to the English throne, even with the help of powerful Masonic allies in France. But by the time the Enlightenment was underway, the Templar ideal of a free society founded on religious and political liberty had taken root, philosophically at least. Scottish, English, and French Masons had begun to dramatically change the way the world thought. Locke, Montesquieu, Voltaire, all Masons, preached the philosophy of liberty, a natural consequence of both Templar experience and the suppression of their ideals. As if by providence, then the tradition sprouted on distant shores, the threads, now luminous strands, of which united the philosopher revolutionaries of the New World. On August 28, 1769, St. Andrew's Masonic Lodge in Boston conferred a Freemasonic degree named after the Knights Templar. By 1773, the lodge had assumed a highly significant role in the American Revolution. The Grand Lodge of Scotland made the colonial physician and patriot Joseph Warren Grand Master of the American continent. Other members were Paul Revere and John Hancock, and the lodge's membership overlapped with the most catalytic secret society of the day, the Sons of Liberty, with at least 12 members of the lodge participating in the Boston Tea Party. But the story does not end in Boston. Freemasons played major roles in the Revolutionary War itself and in the signing of the Constitution. These members included George Washington, many of his generals, Benjamin Franklin, Patrick Henry, and the Marquis de Lafayette. Franklin was a member of a mysterious French society called the Royal Lodge of Commanders of the Temple west of Carcassonne, a mouthful in more ways than one. That our golden thread links Benjamin Franklin to the medieval city of Carcassonne, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, connects him with some of the most secret history of all. The area around the fortress at Carcassonne, a medieval center for Cathars and Templars, houses a network of profound and mysterious symbols having to do with sacred geometry. Symbols that surface in ritual garments worn by Franklin and Washington during Masonic ceremonies. And as if designed by the forces of creation, an uncanny arrangement of mountain peaks forms a perfect Masonic five-pointed star around René de Chateau in the Carcassonne area. A series of medieval churches, towers, and ancient Celtic sites expand upon the design, creating Masonic triangles in the precise proportions of the golden mean of sacred geometry, an overall pattern that stretches from Rennes-le-Château to the island of Bornholm in the Baltic Sea, where evidence of a Templar presence exists, to Jerusalem and the Temple of Solomon. The vast geometric design and the symbols carved in stone at the sites have been traced to the Priory of Sion and to the Templars, secret societies working in ways that transcend culture, religion, and mundane history. Our golden thread represents only a portion of the whole cloth. The greater tapestry suggests that though the mystery is even more profound, even more elusive, it is also as apparent as the Great Seal of the United States or the Masonic symbol found on the dollar bill. That the full story has been kept from us should not be surprising, however. That which we perceive merely as subtle and continuous manifestations, as a raging current at the auspicious hour, a deluge that threatens to the tyrants of orthodoxy, the guardians of politically correct history. That current rages still for those who have ears to hear the roarings of the waters, but don't expect to find the secret story in a history textbook. Instead, follow the golden thread. And that is the end of that article. I am going to read Article 8, the Templars and the Vatican, but I want to take a very brief break. And I will be back. Just a couple minutes. All right, I am back. Get into this other article, shall we? Okay. So we've got the Templars and the Vatican. The Forbidden Joan Johannite Heresy by Mark Amaru Pinkham. I don't think I've ever read anything by him. According to one esoteric tradition, after excavating the foundations of Solomon's temple for 9 years, the Templar Knights left the Middle East with 5 caskets, or cases, full of treasures they had collected in the Holy Land. These cases, the story goes, were eventually deposited in Kilwinning, the mother lodge of Scottish Freemasonry, before being transported to Roslin Castle, ancient home of the Sinclair barons of Roslin, where they were kept safe until a fire broke out in the building. The cases were then quickly removed from the castle, and very soon afterward the construction of Roslin Chapel officially began. Thus it appears that the chapel may have been built specifically to hold the 5 cases. This notion was apparently corroborated in the 1990s by Andrew Sinclair, who conducted ground scans at Roslin and discovered 5 rectangular objects or boxes in the crypt underneath the chapel. Sinclair's discovery has fueled speculation about what might be in the cases, including notions of artifacts associated with King Solomon's or blah, blah. Sinclair's discovery has fueled speculation about what might be in the cases, including notions of artifacts associated with Solomon's temple or Herod's temple, and possibly some ancient scrolls. Conjecture has it that some of the imagined artifacts in the cases were discovered by the knights via clues they found while studying obscure Essene texts, a theory recently corroborated by the discovery of the Copper Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Clues found in the Copper Scroll have led archaeologists to some empty pits that are in close proximity to Templar symbols and weapons, thus apparently revealing that the knights had overseen the secret excavations and then absconded with whatever treasure they found. The hypothetical scrolls that may exist within the 5 cases have been theorized to include genealogical information regarding a family spawned by Jesus and Mary Magdalene, or, assert authors Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas in The Hiram Key, I have that book, they possibly contain Essene information regarding the origins of Freemasonry. But at present, all that is known for certain about the scrolls is that one of them contains a diagram with symbols recalling the mysterious Johannite heresy. That's what that's what it looks like to me. Johannite. A Gnostic belief system into which the Templars may have been initiated in the Holy Land. Copied by Lambert de Saint Omer, a retired schoolmaster when the Templar Knights passed through Flanders as they moved through northern Europe. This diagram, today entitled The Heavenly Jerusalem, hangs on a wall in a museum in Ghent, Belgium. It is a map of the New Jerusalem as described in the Book of Revelation. Johannite, I don't know. Heretical wisdom is evident in the design via the identification of a Messiah, the figure prophesied to. Wow, why am I having so much trouble with this? Figure prophesied to found the holy city of the future as being not Jesus but John the Baptist. Okay, so this is the picture they're talking about. The diagram of the heavenly Jerusalem in Ghent, Ghent, I don't know, Ghent, Belgium, by Lambert de Saint Omer. Lambert. So let's see if I can get my hand out of the way of it here. There we go. A little bit of writing at the bottom. I don't know if I can get close enough that you can see any of that. It's awfully faint. There we go. Oh. Okay. Such a designation is consistent with the ancient Johannite, I'm going to say Johannite, heresy, which stated that John was both Messiah and founder of the Gnostic Johannite path that leads to the initiative vision of the heavenly Jerusalem. According to this heretical tradition, there were two messiahs or chosen ones, with John, the priest Messiah, one rung above Jesus, the incarnated King Messiah. If the Johannite heresy is truly the key to understanding the Templar scroll now in Belgium, it must be allowed that the knights were Johannites and embraced a greater veneration for John the Baptist than for Jesus. Furthermore, if they were Johannites, then they practiced a Gnostic path composed of heretical rites that culminated in an inner revelation regarding the nature of the universe and the goal of human existence. This would explain why the 5 cases with their Johannite scrolls ended up in Rosslyn Chapel. The Sinclair builder of the chapel considered himself to be a caretaker and preserver of the Templars' Gnostic wisdom. Earl William Sinclair was a Grand Master Freemason of the developing Scottish Rite, an order that had descended directly from the Templars who fled France and later made their home in Scotland. According to Niven Sinclair, a contemporary patriarch of Clan Sinclair, rather than risk death by exposing the Gnostic secrets in his possession, Earl William embedded them within his stone edifice. Perhaps he knew at the time that the secrets he was hiding for posterity, secrets that would prove that the Templars were Johannite Gnostics and heretics, were indeed the Templars' greatest secret. I've never heard of this Johannite heresy. I'm not that well versed in some of that stuff, so um, I'm definitely going to have to look it up and find out more about it. Okay, the disbelief of Pope Clement V. According to conventional history, the first intimation that the Vatican had regarding the Templars' Gnostic and Johannite predilections came to the surface during the Knights' depositions for allegations of heresy in 1307. Then in 1308, Pope Clement V disbanded the ruthless Inquisition so that he could privately interview the Templar knights himself. At stake was his own private bodyguard of knights, which, since the time of Pope Honorius II and the Council of Troyes in 1128, had been the Holy See's personal militia. The knights had been accused of a litany of heretical offenses, any one of which could have been reason enough to cast them into the holy fires of the Inquisition, but since many of the knights' confessions had been extracted under extreme torture, their credibility had been compromised. Therefore, having never fully believed the damning allegations against his beloved Templars, Clement V confidently called for 72 knights to be transported from Paris to his villa in Poitiers in southern France, where he was sure they would recant their previous testimonies. Imagine his surprise then, after assuring the knights that they were safe in his home, no matter how damning their confessions might be. The Templars refused to discredit the confessions previously extracted from them in the dark and dank torture chambers of Paris. Pope Clement, who is essentially a pawn put into office by King Philip, could only scratch his head in disbelief and lament that his knights had somehow strayed from the straight and narrow. To his dismay, he had found out conclusively that the vile allegations against the Templars were indeed true. The Pope was forced to accept the fact that he had lost his knights. Later, within the silence of his quarters, the distraught Pope must have wondered whether the Templars had ever truly been a Christian army of the Church. What the Vatican really knew. Since the time of the Templars' private audience with Clement V, a body of evidence has been forming to prove that, although the Pope was blind to the Knights' heretical activities, other informed church officials within the Vatican had known about their heretical propensities. For example, according to testimony given to one Father Antonio Sizzi, during the Templar trial, some of the Knights' Gnostic activities had been witnessed by Vatican spies in Palestine well before 1307. The fact also became clear during the Templar trials that both the Vatican and King Philip of France had sent their spies to oversee the Knights' activities in Europe before 1307. Some of the spies were later chosen as witnesses for the prosecution. It was because of the evidence uncovered by these early spies that months before the Templars' mass arrest, King Philip knew exactly what heretical activities to instruct his 12 specially selected spies to look for when he had them infiltrate certain Templar preceptories. The monarch may also have known that what heresies to look for from studying information contained within a secret Templar document. This document, entitled Baptism of Fire of the Brothers Consulate, and often referred to by Templar historians as the Secret Rule of the Templars, was discovered in 1780 in the Vatican Library by a Danish bishop. Said to have been written in AD 1240 by the French Templar master named Roncellinus. It appears to have been to give a green light to all the heretical offenses that the knights were accused of in the 14th century. Permission to indulge in all manner of Templar heresy can be found in this document, including defilement of the cross, denial of Christ as the Savior, sexual liaison, and the worship of an idolic head known as Baphomet. There is even a passage within the document that gives the knights permission to initiate other Gnostics, including Cathars, Bogomils, and even assassins, into their order. If the baptism of fire of the Brothers Consulate was indeed in circulation beginning in AD 1240, it would have been an easy task for church or royal spies to procure a copy for their employers. The Knights of St. John. Hold on just a second. Okay, yeah. We've got a full page picture coming up on the next page, but the Knights of St. John. The more substantial bit of evidence in support of the notion that the Vatican was aware of the Templars' heretical Johannite affiliations came in the mid-1800s when Pope Pius IX gave his famous allocution of Pio Nono, not familiar with that, against the Freemasons. In fact, this address implies that the Vatican may have known all along about a heretical Templar Johannite relationship. At the time of his momentous address, the Pope was under immense pressure to take a stand against the uprising of numerous heretical Gnostic sects forming in France, one of which was the Johannite Church of Primitive Christians. This sect claimed to be a direct descendant of the early Knights Templar, and the chief of the sect, Bernard Fabre Palaprat, claimed to be a Templar Grand Master in line from both Hugh de Payne and John the Apostle. Pope Pius's subsequent denigration of the sect during his address proved that the Church had ostensibly known for hundreds of years about an intimate Templar Johannite association. And there's a long quote here. The Johannites ascribed to St. John the Baptist the foundation of their secret church, and the grand pontiffs of the sect assumed the title of Christos anointed or consecrated, and claimed to have succeeded one another from St. John by an uninterrupted succession of pontifical powers. He who, at the period of the foundation of the order of the temple, claimed these imaginary prerogatives was named Theoclet. He knew Hugh de Payne. He installed him into the mysteries, and this is really small writing, sorry. He installed him into the mysteries and hopes of his pretended church. He succeeded him by the notions of sovereign priesthood and supreme royalty, and finally designated him as his successor. End quote. Okay, so our full page picture here is captioned Salome contemplates the severed head of John the Baptist. Could it have been the Baphomet that the Templars were accused of worshiping? Okay, so here is the picture. It's going to be hard for me to get my fingers out of the way. Sorry. Um, and it's so big, I'll have to just scroll up. So there's the head on a platter. So there you go. There's the whole thing, but okay. Pope Pius's address was soon corroborated by some highly respected esoteric historians of the 19th century. In Isis Unveiled, Madame Blavatsky revealed, quote, "They, the Knights Templar, were at first the true knights of John the Baptist, crying in the wilderness and living on wild honey and locusts." End quote. While her contemporary, the self-styled Templar descendant and Kabbalist Eliphas Levi, volunteered in the History of Magic, quote, "The Templars had two doctrines. One was concealed and reserved to the leaders, being that of Joanism. The other was public, being Roman Catholic doctrine. The chiefs alone knew the aim of the order. The subalterns followed without distrust." End quote. I have never read Eliphas Levi, but I've got all of his books. So they'll be coming up eventually. Thus, Levi confirmed the Templars' affiliation with the Gnostic Joanites, but he went one step further in pointing out that it was particularly the Grand Masters and chiefs of the order who were aware of the Knights' heretical activities. This notion has been corroborated by transcripts compiled by the Papal Council during the Templar trials that show that when the Knights were questioned regarding one of their most important Joanite rites, that of worshipping the idolic head called Baphomet, only the chiefs of the order knew anything about it. The caretaker of the head was, at the time, Hugh de Perrot, the second in command under Templar Grand Master Jacques de Molay, who secretly carried the head from one preceptory to the next whenever an initiation or ceremony called for its presence. What was the Baphomet? Who or what was the Baphomet, and how did it connect the Templars to the Joanites? The contemporary Joanites, who became separated from mainstream Templarism in the mid-19th century, claim to know. Supposedly, their church, the Apostolic Joanite Church, is in possession of secret wisdom descended directly from the chiefs of the Knights Templar. According to James Foster, former primate of the Joanite Church, the Baphomet of the Templars was the decapitated head of John the Baptist, the Messiah of Joanite tradition. This would explain the extreme sanctity of the Templars' This would explain the extreme sanctity the Templars ascribed to the head and why it was the sole possession of the Order's second in command. According to the Templars at their trial, the head possessed special power and could make, quote, trees blossom and the land to produce, end quote. Legend has it that when John's head was found by the Templars in the Bucolian Palace in Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, the head had been used to keep an 11th century emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire vibrant and alive by moving the head into close proximity to the emperor's body on a daily basis. This power, known as the Holy Spirit in the West and Kundalini in the East, is the same power John was saturated with during his lifetime in the Holy Land. It is this power that can awaken itself as a normally dormant evolutionary energy at the base of the spine and culminate in Gnostic awareness. So the rising of the Kundalini from the base chakra to the crown chakra. Okay, so that is the end of that article. So we will get on to articles 9 and 10 next time. And that's going to be the Lost Templar Fleet and the Jolly Roger and the mystery of the Battle of Bannockburn. So we'll be going back to that. Let's see. I don't know if there are 11 or 12. Sorry. Yeah, there are 12 articles altogether. After 12, that leads us to part 3 of the book. So that gets back into the Scottish Sinclairs. So we will read 10 and 11 next time. The Pyramids of Scotland. Ooh, that's going to be interesting. Yeah. So look forward to that. We'll leave it off there. And I feel like gaming tonight. So I'm going to end this session and I'll come back and play some Hogwarts Legacy. So I will see you in the next session in just a few minutes.